I'm here today to talk about AI-enabled frameworks. And actually, it's really more of an exploration about what it might be like to put people first in this new age. But first, just a word about me. I mean, I've obviously been introduced much better than I could myself. But I thought I would say that here are a few projects that I'm involved in if you want to check them out. Now, I won't be really getting into them today, but obviously Nuxt is probably the main thing that I spend my time doing. I'm full-time open source, but there are also one or two other projects too, like regexp.dev, which aims to make regular expressions more understandable and type safe, and totally compiles away to normal regular expressions when you build your project. Fontaine, which aims to reduce cumulative layout shift if you're using custom web fonts. Elk, which is a client for Mastodon. If you want to see when you started what your first commit was on GitHub, you can visit firstcommit.is. And do check out my website if you want to get in touch with me at any point, because I would love to help if I can. So if you've got any questions or anything that comes out from the talk today that we don't get a chance to cover afterwards, please do get in contact. This is where I am right now. This is the other view. Like if you're looking forward, I have just one cat in the room. And so hopefully she's not going to jump on my lap as I go. And I've not got my coffee. I've got some tea, and hopefully that's going to be useful. It's really cold. The heating is off in my house, and outside is pouring with rain. So the northeast of England might be pretty, but this is definitely a day for coziness. So thank you everybody for being here. I'm certainly going to hopefully enjoy myself. So I lead the team on Nuxt, which is a framework for building web applications. It's built on Vue for the front end rendering engine, and Nitro for the back end, our serverless framework, which we actually built for Nuxt, but which is now totally independent and can be used for other meta frameworks, like, for example, Analog, which is an Angular meta framework. The aim for Nuxt is really that it should require zero effort to get started. And we really prioritize developer experience. So we want it to be a great experience, and for there to be very low friction between getting going and producing what you want. I think really capturing that magic thing we were talking about a moment ago. It should feel like magic when you're in the zone and you're able to code and create something that works well. That's at least what I would want to see. And Nuxt is meant to be very extensible. So we have a whole library of modules, for example, that you can drop into your project, or you can even create your own. And today I'm going to do something that is a little bit crazy with regard to Nuxt. So I do hope that all works out well, but it's meant to be extensible. So you can do all kinds of different things, even ones that might not be envisioned by the people who create it in the first place. Do feel free to check it out. To start with, I wonder if you would be able to let me know if you have used Nuxt 3. We recently rewrote Nuxt from scratch. We released it stably a year ago, November 2022, and it's been getting going over the last year. So hopefully my WebSockets are going to work and see some results coming in if you visit those QR codes. So I'm obviously very interested to see who is adopting it, and whether or not that's something you've tried out before. Oh, this is fantastic! There are lots of people here who haven't used Nuxt at all. So I'll give you a feel for what that's like. And if you are a Nuxt 2 user, then you'll see a little bit about what we've been doing to work on a Nuxt 3, and maybe I'll convince you to make the switch. Amazing. Whoa, there's so many people. I'm not sure I realized that there would be so many of us, but thank you for listening to me so far. Great. Responses are still coming in, but I think we can safely say that most people here haven't used Nuxt, which is great. By the way, I do think quite strongly that frameworks, meta frameworks, they're useful tools, But we as developers, our tool users, were artisans. So we should be able to use lots of different things. And it doesn't really matter at the end of the day what tool you use. It matters what you build and create with it. So the aim is always to make something that is fit for purpose. And I'd like to think Nuxt is that. Okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about a serious problem with the web and with applications. And I think the problem and the reason that I'm talking about malleable apps is that I think the web and particularly web applications that we create, we have a problem with them. And that problem is not just me and what I might want, because often I find that apps are not designed perfectly for me. They don't exactly match my use and my requirements, my needs, what I want out of them. They might have a UI that I find confusing. Everything is pretty much it's very rarely a perfect match, even when you're using a really well-designed app. And even if you could make an app that was perfectly designed for you, there's another problem. Other people, and particularly, I would say, Bob. When you start thinking about the diverse users and people who might use an application, it quickly becomes very difficult to find and create an application that works for everyone. And product designers, obviously, this is a problem that they face. Building personas, deciding who your target audience are, what features you need to meet that target audience, and at the end of the day, recognizing that your app is not going to satisfy everybody. So you have a sort of a Venn diagram of different needs and wants for users, and we have basically come to accept that the applications we build are not necessarily going to meet everyone's needs. So they are, or at least not perfectly. Or we're just going to accept that some users are not going to be the target audience for our apps. Now, for that, and speaking into that particular problem, which I think we don't talk about a lot, we talk about building an app that's well designed, we talk about making it intuitive, but we don't talk about the fact that it is impossible often to satisfy everyone or to build an app that is intuitive for everyone. We're always leaving people out, and we are, in general, okay with that because it seems to be a necessity for us. Now, there is the concept of malleable applications, the idea that you can build apps that are user-centric, apps that change based on users' needs. And there's been a whole body of research. I'll give a link at the end with lots of details on some of the research that's been done. There's been a lot of research at trying to find out how we might be able to create applications that are user-centric, that actually enable the app to take on different shapes for different users. So there are a number of ways that you can even do that today. For example, you can manipulate an app externally. I'm actually displaying my slides here in Arc. And Arc has a feature called boosts. So I can actually create a boost for this site. I can say that I want to make a change to it. So I'm going to, for example, zap something. I could select a part of this slide and I can manipulate it. I could say, I want to get rid of this user-centric thing, and I can just zap it like that. So that's my boost. I've created it. Actually, it's probably not a very good zap because this is pretty much this pretty part of my slide. But anyway, I've done it. I've zapped that particular bit of that website that I'm displaying for my slides. And you can do that. You can manipulate an app externally, but that's never going to be perfect because you can only remove elements. You might be able to make some other changes to the page. But what if you want an app to be deeply configurable from within? So as a developer, to create an app that is designed to be malleable, to be changed by users, so they can actually do things with it that you don't necessarily envision to start with. So I think we can do that. And I think we can do it with Nuxt. Let's give it a try. So to start with, let's fire up a new Nuxt project. I'm going to use Bun in this particular case. You can use anything really, but I'm just going to create a new Nuxt project, which I'm going to do with Nuxi on Nuxt CLI. So our new Nuxt project out of the box is going to install some packages. I'll initialize the Git repository and I'll fire up JetBrains. So we don't have a lot to get started. We have our app, our lock file, and a package .json. So in our Nuxt config file, we don't have a lot of configuration going on. In our package JSON, we just have a few dependencies, and all of the code is in this app file here. I can fire up I'm going to use the native bun runner, and I'm just going to fire up our app there in the web server. So if I were to pull open if I were to pull open a web browser, we'll open the web server, and you can see we have a basic starter app up and running. And I'll just close the sidebar here, and we'll open up our app. There we go. Now, pretty much anything that I might want to display in the app here is going to show up on the right-hand side. So I could do something like hello world. We have hot reloading. This is obviously using view syntax. If you're not familiar with it, we have a bit which looks a little bit like HTML. We can have another bit which is a script block, and that's where we can put our JavaScript. And then we could have a style block, and we could put some CSS. In this particular case, let's just add a couple of dependencies. Let's add Pico CSS. That will give us some nice styles to get started for a demo. And I also want to add OpenAI. So let's start the dev circle again. And we're just going to import those styles. There we go, looking better already. And we're going to make this, give it a bit of space. So the app that I want to create is it's pretty straightforward. I want to create an app which has it's malleable. So we'll create an app and stick it in there. And I also want to create an app which has got a way of making changes. So we'll create some changes in our app. Now, when you're building a Nuxt application, we have, and we're going to need in this case, a server. So we have a server folder out of the box, and I'm going to go ahead and create an API endpoint, which is going to be API, we'll call it completion.ts. And that will just have a default export, define event handler, and we will basically be able to do anything there that we want. Out of the box, any server endpoint that you have within Nuxt is just going to directly return a JSON object, and it's going to take care of adding content type and stringifying it and making it directly return JSON. In this case, we're going to want to interface with OpenAI. So I'll create a new OpenAI client. There we go. And we're going to configure it for us. So we're going to want to create a little, let's see, const OpenAI equals new OpenAI. And we have, I think, got to provide an API key. Nuxt provides a way of handling runtime configuration so that you don't have to hard code secrets. And it's called runtime config. In this case, we can create a little runtime config object and pass in an OpenAI object with a token property. I'm just going to save that. And actually, Nuxt is going to tell us that we're going to be able to set this with a particular environment variable. Now, I have actually, in advance, created this file because I didn't want to leak it on the internet. So I'm just going to copy it into our project. And that hopefully is now going to mean that we can access this token from the runtime config. So what we are able then to do is access it like this. Token is use runtime config, and it's going to be OpenAI. We've got type support for it, token. So we can then pass in that as our API key. And now we need to get some data from OpenAI, and we're going to use the chat completion protocol, which is pretty straightforward. We do something like this. We have, what is it? Chat completions create. Don't you love TypeScript? It really takes you along the way. We'll give it a model of GPT 3.5 Turbo. Seems good. And we have some messages to kick us off. So we're going to basically, we could do something like this: role system, content is tell the user a joke. And then we would do something like role user content there. And if we hit this endpoint, we're going to just return that completion for us. We'll say something like joke. It's going to be completion choices 0.message. So let's just check if that's going to work for us with our basic joke. Oh, I think I might need to restart the server after I copy that token in. Let's try that again. Okay, so we have our OpenAI integration up and running. And actually what we're going to want to do here is return something that we can understand programmatically. And I'll show you why in a moment. So we'll do something like this. You only speak JSON. You are a computer in charge of, let's say, modifying elements of a view application to suit the needs of the user. And then we'll have another system message which says something like, here is the current state of the app in JSON format. We're going to have to figure out how to do that. And then we want a user prompt. The user is going to say something like, here's how I want to change the app. And then we can actually just get the response. So role system content provide the new state of the app in JSON format. Okay. So these two bits we're going to actually have to take as an input. And Nuxt provides a very convenient way to access inputs from a request. So we can actually just pull them in from the body. So we do something like const body is await read body event. You'll notice I'm not importing any of these things. Nuxt makes everything available from an auto import point of view. We expose all the data via TypeScript to let your editor know that these are available to you. And then rather than declaring them globally, we import them just when you use them, so that the features you don't need are still tree shaken out, but you don't have the inconvenience of having to load 20 lines of imports at the top of your file. Okay, so we've got some data coming in, and we can call this. We can have a prompt, maybe. We'll call it a prompt. We require a prompt to come in, and then maybe this can be malleables, and we'll just make it a little prettier for the AI to have a look at. And so if this is coming back without any data, we'll just throw back. We want this to be, I guess, the malleables. And if there's none, we're just going to throw an error. JSON parse content, not content. Throw create error, and we'll give it a status code of 42 and a message of not parse response. And this is the actual content. Right. Okay, so this should actually interact with OpenAI for us. It's going to take the current state of the app. It's going to take a prompt from the user to change that state, and then hopefully it's going to manipulate the state. So let's dive into actually making this work from a code point of view. So what we would want to do, I think, is have a form. We're going to have an input to take the user prompt, and we're going to have a button, and that is going to submit the form for us. So request changes, we'll call it. And the form in Vue, we can bind a prompt, a message to this input. So we'll just create that here. And it can be pretty much blank to start with, and placeholder, we'll give it a placeholder message, make everything better. And we need to handle some submission event here on the form. So we'll do @submit prevent request changes, and we'll create a little async function that's going to handle that. So Nuxt provides a convenient isomorphic fetch helper, which is a wrapper around native fetch, which is going to enable us to hit our API completion endpoint. It's type hinted for us. And we can pass in a number of things here. We'll make it a post request. We need to pass in a body. I think we're expecting malleables and prompt. So we can pass those in, malleables and a prompt, which will be our prompt.value. So this is going to pass all of this through to the completion endpoint and get a response. That response is going to contain malleables. And actually, we should be able to see that we have that type hinted for us, but we might need to say it's going to be a record string any. We should see that that's coming back typed for us. Great. So what we now need to do is somehow have a way to reflect the app and make the app changeable based on what users are wanting out of their application. So I think we can do that in a couple of ways. So we need to first create something that's reactive. So we can create a reactive object with view, and that's going to be a record. And let's see, it should have a couple of things. We want a query. I'm thinking we can use a GraphQL endpoint. Oops, by this GraphQL playground. And I looked in advance for a couple of GraphQL endpoints that were free and open source, free to use rather. So this one is an e-commerce API called Salia, and here's a query which I've crafted in advance. And if we run that query, it should just give us some data. So it's working. So we'll just take this query and paste it in as our first malleable thing. So this should enable us to modify the query if we need to. So we've got our GraphQL query. And let's see, we're going to do something with that. But we first need to create a component that's going to do something. And we're going to create a component that can be changed. So we're going to call this template, and we're going to put some view code in here. So our view code is going to look a little bit like, it's going to be as simple as I can make it. So we'll create a div, and it will have a list inside, a list of the products from this endpoint, and we'll create each one of them will have a list item. So what is it? Edge data products, edges, key, because it's a list, and that helps us deduplicate things when we're changing. And we'll just display the name, which is coming in, so that the edges node name. So that's what our little view component is going to look like out of the bat. And we need to render this. So we'll create a little thing called malleable component. And we're going to need to do this at runtime. So I'm just going to make a quick change to our Nuxt configuration and say we're actually going to use the view runtime compiler. Our malleable component is going to use a setup function. That's what mostly people would be using in the view app. We're going to use a data fetching composable from Nuxt. So we are going to perform a fetch request to this GraphQL endpoint, which is, I think it's this demo Salior. And we're going to make the post method as its GraphQL. And we are going to pass a query object, and we're going to grab this query out. So that's going to be here. And I'm doing it like this because this makes it a reactive reference. So whenever this changes, it will refetch the query, which is a little bit of magic that enables this to be automatically reactive. And we'll return a render function. Normally, you wouldn't be doing anything at this low level of data, but it enables us to do some cool stuff here. So we'll pass a dynamic component. We are going to expose all the data from this fetch to the template, so we can reference it like this. And then we are going to pass the template itself, which is going to be, and that is all that we need to do to make a reactive component that's going to change when we make changes to it by interacting with it, by interacting with our app. We can just insert this here. So malleable component should be immediately usable in the template for us. And what else? Let's indent that so it looks a bit nicer. Let's see. Malleable component, request changes. We can make this a little bit nicer. We'll create a status of idle or pending. And we can add a little bit of handling here. So we do status.value is pending. I'm not going to add error handling for the moment. We'll reset it to idle afterwards. We can also, we need to do something with data malleables. So we do something like this for const key in data malleables. Actually, I think we could probably just do an object assign. Or we could do this. We'll say malleables.key is data malleables key. I think that should be fine. Look right to you. Let's see what's going on. This probably won't work, but we'll try. Okay, localhost. Oh, do I need to restart this? If I do, what's happened? Okay. Okay. Nothing is rendering. Oh. Prompt. What have I done? I need this to be a script setup. That's also why everything was. Try this one more time. Okay, so we have an app now. It's pulling in everything according to our query, and it's displaying our initial rendering. So let's see if what we've done works. And honestly, at this point, I've got no idea if it will. So no errors. Let's say, what else do we have to play with? We've got display as a table with product name and price. I assume that's doing something in the background. That is the other issue with sort of prompts. It can take some time. Is anything happening? Let's add a little pending. Nothing seems to be going wrong, but also nothing really seems to be happening. So let's just do something with the status. We'll add it to our button and say area busy is status equals pending. And okay, it's still pending. Is it taking so long? Network. The page and say display product names and prices at the table. Okay, that did actually complete, but maybe it didn't do what we wanted to do. What was the response? Oh, are we not sending anything in? Of course, we're not sending our app state. Let's send like this. Try one more time. Display as a table with names and prices. Fingers are so crossed right now. Oh, okay, it's done it. So we now have a table, and it's coming in with items and prices. Let's just reset the prompt. And display as a table with items and prices. One more time. I don't really, by the way, know if this is reproducible in any way. I guess presumably it might not do what it did a moment ago. Let's bold the table headings. Ah, okay, nice. It's bolded. Let's see. Display currency symbols. Okay. Replace USD with $sign. Beautiful. Okay. Add thumbnails in first column. Whoa, those are really big thumbnails, but it has added them. I guess just above the title. Well, I'm not sure this is the final UI that we're going for, but I do think it's interesting that we can actually do something like this. We can actually have a look at an app that is designed to be changed by the user at runtime, and we've built this in not very much code. I would like, in fact, to explore making this a module so that people can just add it to their Nuxt applications and use it. But anyway, for the moment, I will put the code up on a Git repo. It's not up there yet because I have just coded it, but I'll push it as soon as the talk is over. I would like to think that malleable applications and the idea of building apps that use AI to redesign themselves to fit the needs of the user and what their users want is something that we might all want to explore and play around with a little bit. If you are interested, check out the talk AI, GraphQL, and the Rise of Malleable Applications by Alexandra Sikora. It's a really, really interesting talk. And a lot of what I've been talking about today, she'll go into in much more detail, certainly from a practical point of view. So have a look at that. If you're interested in Nuxt and want to build something like this yourself, feel free to check out nuxt.com on how to get started. And feel free to follow Nuxt on Twitter or on Mastodon. Join our Discord server if you want to find out a bit more. And if there's anything I can answer or help with, please don't hesitate to get in contact with me. I'm at daniel@ro.dev, or my website is ro.dev, and you can find most of the ways to contact me there. But I guess I just want to say thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure to share some of what I've been enjoying playing around with recently. And yeah, I hope you have some questions. I'd love to answer them.
Yeah, it was a really, really cool talk. Like, yeah, we always think of applications as kind of these rigid things, but having AI and LLMs at your disposal can kind of like open up a new world of possibilities. So I really appreciate you showing us something like that. Jan, you've been kind of checking out the questions in chat.
Yes.
Have you picked out any good ones for Daniel?
I think they're fantastic questions. The first one I would like to start with, which is for developers always very important, is obviously what color scheme and font did you use throughout your talk?
So I'm using. I felt bad not using JetBrains Mono, which by the way I do also really like. But I'm using Dank Mono, which is I'm a big fan of. And then I'm using the Pale Night theme. So there should be, and I've sort of tuned my JetBrains settings to be as minimal as possible. So
it looked really nice. We got to talk about the ligatures at some point, but it looked really nice.
Are you not a fan? Do you not like ligatures?
It's a worse.
Yeah. Yeah, Jan and Paul are not team tabs. They hate tabs. They hide literally everything.
No. I like tabs a lot. It's good for accessibility, and tabs are a good thing. Ligatures are the worst, though.
No, I meant
No.
I meant like visual tabs, not spaces versus tabs. Like some
Visual
people just
tabs.
like hide literally everything in
Oh,
WebStar.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So But yeah, well, what are some what's the next question, Jan? What do you have?
Yes. I think this is a good thing to set the mood a little bit. What problem does Nuxt.js try to solve?
So the key problem is best practice built in. So if you're getting started and you find yourself with boilerplate to make things work in the best possible way, that is what Nuxt aims to solve first. And the second is to get rid of friction, which I guess is the same thing in some ways. But a lot of friction we just sort of accept as our default. So yes, of course, I've got to import things. Of course, I've got to declare my types manually. So for example, we infer type the type of your API call from the actual API endpoint that you create. And we just do that by telling TypeScript that that is what it's going to be, as in we just connect the two files. And we don't do any, we don't sort of process it at runtime. It's just TypeScript doing that. And that kind of thing, if you had to do that yourself, it would be both really tough to do and also a lot of extra work. So getting rid of that friction and putting best practices in to start with. So
I also very much like this auto import feature. That was a cool thing to see. I've not used Nuxt before. I was one of the 100 people not using it, but that was cool to see. I like that because it's usually something that I always hide in the IDE because you don't care about it.
yeah. Well, it's yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was not a fan initially. When one of the team came up with the idea for auto imports, I thought, I don't like this. I would much rather be explicit. But you know, the more I've used it, I really think it helps. In the same way that the script setup block in Vue, if you use Vue, basically serves to unwrap your code so that your logic is front and center, and that's what you see when you look at your component. I think auto imports do the same thing, because actually they are relevant. Obviously, you need to know where the things are coming from, but you don't need to know that all the time. So if you see your logic and then you can just, command click to go through to the actual source of that auto import, or just hover and see where it's coming from, that's actually maybe a better choice in terms of it's just as transparent, but takes up less visual space. It gives you less noise when you're looking to write.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole time you were talking, I was thinking about noise to signal ratio, and you're absolutely right. Shameless plug. I think that's kind of what good tooling does for people, right? Like you can kind of trust your tooling versus needing to like spell everything out in code. So, we did see a really good question from a Michelle, Jan. I think that one is definitely worth bringing up.
Yes,
So
I got that right here. And boom. Easy. The question was, how can we validate that the data we're getting back is correct? For instance, if you're integrating a chart framework, how can we validate that the chart is correct?
So there are a lot of things, by the way, that I did in my demo just now that I wouldn't do in an actual app. But one of them is obviously validation, because I'm just randomly passing the data, and thankfully it did all come back as valid JSON. And the prompt does seem to work. And I've tested lots of different things with it, and it just seems to be fine. But you could use a library like Valibot or Zod to validate it, and I would validate it on the server. Because you're in charge of your own server, so you can validate it there and trust that what's coming back to your client is right. So we're passing it already, so you could create some custom errors for pass failures, and you could do a little bit more testing if you wanted to. For example, you could actually pass to make sure it's a valid Vue template. That would be something you could do. You could also pass the query to check that it is in fact a valid GraphQL query, things like that. I would also I just created a query. I didn't pass any schema information on, but that's maybe something you would also try. I would probably enable the completion to be more accurate in terms of possibilities that you might, because obviously it sort of only knows what I have in my initial query and the initial state of the app, and it can manipulate that for me. But actually, if we gave it a schema, it could probably come up with new queries and GraphQL sort of amendments that I might not even have known to start with. So yes, I would be looking to use Valibot or Zod.
Cool.
I have a personal question. I know we've been asking
No
audience
question
questions.
allowed.
No, I'm not allowed to
No,
ask.
no.
Oh no. Well, I wanted, but I want to get Daniel's opinion about, chat seems to kind of be the de facto UI for folks doing what you did in your demo. Like, can you imagine what the future of interacting with like an AI or LLM might evolve into? Especially you talked about bringing that as a component or module into Nuxt. Can you imagine other ways of exposing that to folks?
Yeah. So the thing is that a lot of what you want to do in terms of exposing things to people is foreseeable in advance. That's fine. So you can do that, and we already have ways of doing that with settings. For example, you can have lots and lots of settings. At some point, though, you run into two problems, and one is that the things that users might want to change in an app are very many, and so if you actually have explicit settings for all of them, you have usability problems. How do you find the specific setting that's what you want? It becomes very difficult. Maybe you use AI or something like that, or fuzzy searching to help users find the setting. But now you have another UI problem. And the second issue is, what if people want to make changes that you don't foresee? Because if you're restricted to only the changes to your app that you actually foresee, it's actually not working to include people who are fundamental, like who have a very, very different point of view from you. You actually still are now a gatekeeper to your app. And so, I mean, obviously that's something we accept as, of course it's like that. Of course, we expect you to be the gatekeeper to your app. But I guess my thought experiment is, what if you're not? What if you actually somehow aren't determinative of how your app can be used?
Yeah, it's interesting because for me, I think like the security implications, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
how do you sandbox people and make sure that they don't do? It's fine them doing unexpected things, but not like malicious unexpected things. And I think that to me is kind of the part that makes me nervous, at least.
So I guess everything here is running on the client, which means that
Mhm.
if you're a coder, you can do all of this yourself. You can amend that client code. It's nothing in client code is really can be a security risk, I think, or you already have a security problem.
Mhm.
I would be very careful about obviously not running anything in a trusted environment like on the server. And I think I think it's much more worrying the idea that the user might break the app. So in
Mhm.
this case, we have a Vue template that we're using a runtime compiler to create. What happens if that breaks? What happens if you have a syntax error? Um, and that I think, again, you need a lot of code to protect that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like an undo button would be quite nice. Detecting errors, obviously, in advance would be pretty important. So I think there are things you would want to explore there.
Yeah. Well, Jan, do we have any last questions? Or I know we're
No,
kind
I
of a
think
little over.
we're kind of tight on the time here. Thanks a lot for all these insights, Daniel. One very last, very last thing. You mentioned at the beginning that you joined or came back to coding like 5 years ago. Like, how was your experience, and what would you recommend like new joiners to our field of industry?
So I found the most helpful thing in terms of learning was to keep digging. So it's very easy to hand things off. Oh, I found a bug. I'm just going to report that issue. But sort of digging in node modules and why is it doing this? And I want to put a console log here. Is that, what is it actually doing? And that kind of exploration I found was really helpful for myself in discovering how things worked, particularly when I had no idea how something worked. So I'm a huge fan of console log. Obviously, you can use a debugger or something like that, but just looking deeper, I think that
Console
kind
log
of
is incredible.
curiosity is something that helped me a lot, and I think would help anyone.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
It
thank you,
was
Daniel.
a great talk. Very brave of you to do basically just live coding.
Yeah.
Great job.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's really kind.
Thank you, Daniel.